Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It is 6:57 a.m. East Coast time, Wednesday, June 12th, and we got a little 8-game night slate today. There is also a 4-game afternoon slate. I will not be covering that slate in the afternoon, but I do have the pitcher sheet available. It's a weird pitching slate. It's up on Patreon. If you want to go over there, you can have it. You can support me over there. I just shot this video literally for 22 minutes, somewhere around there, and then realized that the salaries were all messed up, and I figured I got to do it again. I started to change them manually. I don't know if I just pulled them wrong or if Draftkings the first time I pulled were different. It was definitely user error on my part, but let's cover it again. I pretty much know what I'm looking at for the most part. Some of the salaries changed a little bit, but nothing too drastic to the point where I'm not interested in any players. So starting right at the top, and actually if you're new to the channel, I've been doing this baseball content for about a month now. Maybe you're just discovering me in the baseball DFS space, but I do cover NFL, NBA are my two primary sports. I do some golf videos here and there. WNBA is going to be coming out more, and some NFL off-season content has been slowly releasing, and in July I'm going to be ramping that up. But MLB, I'm going to be covering this throughout the summer, so if you can hit the like button, it helps out. But if you can subscribe and hit the notification bell, that's all I ask if it brings you any value. I am approaching 5,000 subscribers total as a community here, so I thank everybody who's returning and watching these videos and is subscribed for that. I appreciate it so much. It's a huge goal of mine. Big milestone number for sure, a big old round 5,000. So if you can help contribute to that, if you get any value from this, it costs nothing for you. It's just a couple of seconds of your time to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. Thank you so much. That would help me out. So let's go over really quick too. This slate, right? 8 games, 16 teams, or 16 pitchers really. I'll cover it from a pitcher perspective, maybe some stacks to identify. Let's start it out. So 11,300 Verlander is too cheap for Justin Verlander in my opinion any night, but this is a tough matchup. Look, he's a 136 favorite, averages 6 2/3, the most innings pitched out of any pitcher on this slate per start. And he has the best CERA at 3.31. He's a great pitcher. Only walks 5% of batters. He does give up, however, hard hit contact, not that many ground balls, and a decent amount of fly balls. A lot of that was early on in his starts, but he does give up home runs, 1.35 home runs per 9. He faces a team today that has a lot of power, 203 team ISO. They strike out around league average. So there's a lot of things swaying both ways here. Look, it's an 8-game slate. There's not a ton of elite pitchers. I think Justin Verlander is by far the best 10K plus option. He's probably by far the best overall pitcher on the slate. But you're paying 11.3, and there's a good amount of built-in risk due to the fact that the other team has a lot of power. He strikes out about 30.9% of batters, more lefties than righties, so that's going to hurt your Christian Yelich shares, and he doesn't give up as much power, below average power, 0.14, a 140 ISO to lefties, and a 197 ISO to righties. So if you want to kind of get leverage here on a Verlander on an average size slate, which he should have high ownership already built in naturally and probably ends up getting more just due to the nature of the slate, take some one-offs with the righties here. Grandel hit a home run last night. Moustakas, well, more so righties actually. So whoever you like from the right-handed side of the plate from Milwaukee, they're going to have a better chance at, one, making contact. He strikes out 38% of lefties compared to 24% of righties, and also just getting more power on that contact. So I think Verlander at 11.3, I'm going to give you about 3 to 5 pitchers that I think that I'm going to have in my player pool to try and build a lineup at least early on today. And Verlander is definitely one of them. On a slate like this, he has the most upside. He's the guy who, anytime you're playing a tournament, he's probably the guy who gets to 30-plus points more so than anybody on the slate, and definitely probably the only guy realistically with the matchups today, with his strikeout stuff, that can touch 35 to 40 out of anybody on the slate. I think he's the only one who could do it today. So definitely have interest in Verlander. Mike Soroka at 10.9. Look, he came off of a start where he just went 8 innings, pitched well. Has a good matchup today against Pittsburgh. They have a 140 team ISO that is tied for the second lowest, or actually it's tied for the third lowest with Detroit on this slate. A couple of things though. Pittsburgh strikes out 21.9% of the time, so they don't strike out. This is in a hitter-friendly ballpark in Atlanta. So there's a couple of things there. Let's get into Mike Soroka. He gets deep into the games. There's a couple of things that I like out of pitchers when I'm paying up for them. I want to see them get deep into games, limit trouble, number 2, so walks and home runs, be able to strike batters out, and have win upside. Well, Soroka today, the line's not out, but I imagine he's going to have win upside against Pittsburgh, since Pittsburgh's throwing out there Mitch Keller against this Atlanta offense, and Mike Soroka's pitching for Atlanta, so I imagine he'll be a favorite. So there's the win upside. He limits home runs, 0.14 home runs per 9. He's only given up, I think, 1 home run all year. So that's 2. He limits the damage. He works deep into the game, 6.51 innings pitched per start. That's the second best on the slate behind Verlander, and we've seen him get into the 7th and 8th more times than not. But I think the biggest issue is the strikeout stuff, right? If I'm paying 10.9 for a pitcher, he only has 21.7% strikeout stuff, 21% to lefties, 22% to righties. That's not great. And now you're facing a team that just doesn't strike out. 21.9% strikeout rate, like we said, for Pittsburgh. It's one of the lower ones on the slate. At 10-9, the way that Soroka has to get you there is get the win, one, those extra 4 points, and work deep into the games, which he's been able to do. But I much rather rely on a guy who has the strikeout stuff, because if Soroka gets into any trouble, and I mean any trouble, gives up a 2-run home run, gives up a solo shot, gives up a 3-run inning, whatever it is, it's going to be very hard for him at that price point to pay it off, because he doesn't have the strikeout stuff to kind of make up for those runs and hits and walks that he gave up. Now, probably walks aren't going to be an issue, although he does walk 6.5% of batters, a little more than you'd like. So Soroka at 10-9, I just don't think, we know the upside's there if he goes deep into the game, but a lot of his great starts are against teams that strike out. He gets to his 5 or 6, 7 strikeouts during his 7 or 8 innings pitched. Pittsburgh's a team that just doesn't strike out. They make contact. They work the counts deep. So Soroka at 10-9, especially when Verlander's hovering there for $400 more, albeit a tougher matchup, I'm just not going to get to Soroka at 10-9. I understand he's been pitching, came off a good start, been pitching well this year. A lot of it has to do with him going deep into the games, and I don't want to kind of risk that much money on hoping a guy limits the damage that much. Although he has, I'm not going to get there at 10-9. Jose Barrios is 10-3 today. Huge favorite. I mean, a huge favorite. Big reason why is Tommy Milone's going up against his team, and his team has the highest ISO on the slate, the Minnesota Twins. So he's a huge 230 favorite, highest on the slate as of right now with the one game not being out, Atlanta-Pittsburgh's line. But I imagine he holds that highest on the slate. A couple of things. He doesn't walk batters. He doesn't get into too much trouble. 1.19 home runs per 9 is pretty decent. The Seattle team has the second highest ISO, second most powerful team on the slate at 211. They do strike out 25% of the time, and this is a pitcher-friendly ballpark. It is the most pitcher-friendly ballpark on the year. Gives up the least runs overall, 30th in the major leagues, last. So that's pretty good for a guy like, or 32nd actually, last in the major leagues. So that's pretty good for Jose Barrios coming into this. He goes 6 1/3 per start on average. That's the third highest behind Soroka above him, Verlander above him. But similar to Soroka, I'm not interested. At 22.9% strikeout rate, that's below average. Now his matchup allows him to probably gain an extra strikeout in this game against Seattle, who does chase a lot of pitches. He does limit power, but we have to take into account the nature of the slate. And there's a truck backing up out there. Hope that doesn't bother anybody. But we have to take into account the nature of the slate here. Verlander's $11,000 or $10,000 more, and there's a couple of pitchers, and the one right below him that I think has better stuff and is in a better matchup. So Barrios is probably not a guy that I get to. I think he's fine. A lot of win upside, probably goes deep into this game, but there is some risk there, and I'd rather limit that risk. And I like a guy cheaper than him by $700. The next guy up, Joey Lucchesi. 148 favorite, so he's a decent-sized favorite here. He goes up against San Francisco, who has the second lowest ISO. They have no power. They're not really going to threaten Joey Lucchesi, who just doesn't give up any type of power to lefties at all, and he gives up above our average power to righties, but this ballpark in San Francisco is going to help him, and the matchup against the Giants is going to help him. San Francisco strikes out around league average, 23.7%. League average is around 24-ish. So no bump there, but here's the big thing. Lucchesi, he has a 26.8% K percentage. He strikes out 31% of lefties and 22.6% of righties. So you would like to see that righty number a little bit higher, so it maybe is a little bit of a fake K percentage, you can say. There will be some lefties in the middle of this lineup for San Francisco. The matchup in the ballpark help him. I do prefer Lucchesi to Jose Barrios at that price point. I even prefer him to Soroka at the price point of being $1,300 less than Soroka, $700 less than Barrios. So right now, Verlander and Lucchesi would be two of my pitchers out of my 4 or 5 that we're going to get to. Paying $8,700 for Zach Eflin, I just don't think I can do it. He's going up against Arizona. The team doesn't strike out. He has no strikeout stuff, 18.9%. He pitches to contact. The good thing, though, he doesn't give up hard hit contact. So he's getting his ground balls, and it's not really damaging him in terms of they're hitting the ball hard and out of the ballpark. Only walks 6% of batters. He has a 4.64 SIERA, though. That's not great. It makes it look like he's a great pitcher with a 2.88 ERA, but he's really not. He's below average, in my opinion. And now he gets a matchup today against an Arizona team that has a lot of power. This is what I would do in this situation. I'd take Arizona lefties. David Peralta, the other guys at the top of this lineup, whoever it might be, Marte. I'd take lefties because he gives up a 242 ISO to lefties, and he gives up less strikeout rate, about 1% less batters struck out for him. 18.5% that is, compared to 19.3% for righties. So lefties here are going to have a lot more pop against him. I think I go to the lefties from Arizona as one-offs or a mini stack, a two-man stack, whatever it might be. I don't want Zach Eflin at $8,700. I'd rather go to Lucchesi. Merrill Kelly is $8,000. He goes up, same thing. So Merrill Kelly is, if not Zach Eflin's lookalike, he's a little bit worse. He walks more batters. He has a higher Sierra at 4.87. Anything above 4, really, once it starts getting higher in the 4s and definitely in the 5s, scares me. And he only strikes out 18% of batters, limits the contact and damage from lefties, but does give up power to righties. So a guy like Bryce Harper might not be in a great spot today. A guy like Jay Bruce, but your Rhys Hoskins will. I don't want it. Philly doesn't strike out a lot. They work the counts deep. They have above average ISO. $8,000. Sure, it's not that expensive, but he's not a guy that I'm willing to pay that for. He doesn't have the upside in terms of Ks. He doesn't have the upside in terms of going deep into games. 5 2/3 is fine, but it's not as deep as you'd like for a guy going for 8K. So I don't want him either. Brandon Woodruff, 7,600. Look, this guy's been playing great. His strikeout stuff is at 29%, and it's not like he's striking out one side of the plate more than the others. 29.5 from the left, 29.6 from the right. He's playing absolutely phenomenal. He limits power overall, 0.97 home runs per 9, really limiting the power to righties. 0.88 Sierra or 0.88, 0.88 ISO to righties power, and 162 ISO to lefties, still below average. So a lot of things to like here from Brandon Woodruff. 3.5 Sierra. It's the second highest on the slate, only behind Justin Verlander. There's not much to say. He's playing great. He's going deep into the games, 5.7 innings pitched per start, more so than late. He's been getting into the 6, striking out batters. Issue, though, you're facing Houston. You're facing Houston, who has a 207 team ISO, even with their studs out, second or third highest on the slate, and the lowest strikeout rate on the slate at 17.6%. Their strikeout rate has gone down with George Springer, with Correa, with Diaz, with Altuve remains out. All these guys out of the lineup, their ISO has kind of stabilized, if not gone up a little, and their strikeout rate has gone down. So it's impressive that they're still this disciplined, even with 3 or 4 guys who have not been in the lineup too often. So Woodruff here, he's going to be the third guy in my player pool because he's too cheap. This guy should be in the high 8s, if not the 9K range, based on how he's been playing, based on his strikeout stuff. The matchup is worrisome for sure. You're facing a team that there's not a lot of strikeouts to get, but on a slate like this, 8-game slate, where there's really not too many quality options in terms of pitchers at good price points, I imagine Woodruff is underpriced. I think that getting to him is fine. He's my third favorite pitcher today. $7,500 for Jordan Yamamoto. I don't know how to say his name, but he's too expensive. He's facing St. Louis that doesn't strike out. Sure, they have slightly below average team ISO. It's in a pitcher-friendly ballpark, but really is more so a neutral. But this is a guy who was getting around 5 Ks per start, but he had in the 4s in terms of his Sierra in the minor leagues, and he was walking 2 to 3 batters per start. All those numbers are going to most likely get worse here in his first start in the majors, coming up from AA, I believe, not even AAA. Yeah, I don't want this guy. He's not a guy that I'm trying to pay $7,500 for. It's not even like he's in the 5K range. $7,500 for a guy who has not had the greatest stuff in AA. Now I'm trying to make a leap to the majors here against a team that doesn't strike out. Yeah, I don't want that. No, thank you. Danny Duffy, $7,400. Danny Duffy is probably appropriately priced for this slate. He gets Detroit, who strikes out 26.2% of the time, second highest on the slate, in a hitter-friendly ballpark in Kansas City, albeit. And a 150 team ISO for Detroit is pretty good. That's the third lowest on the slate, tied with Pittsburgh. So Danny Duffy, there's some clear issues. He strikes out 21.9% of batters, but he strikes out 27% of lefties here. Now you're going to go up against Detroit, where the top of the lineup has some lefties. The downside of that is he does give up power to lefties, so when they make contact, they have a 190 ISO. They usually hit it pretty far. He doesn't strike out righties, which is going to be probably the majority of this lineup for Detroit today, which worries me. He only goes 5 1/3 innings per start. Maybe he goes a little bit deeper because this matchup is good for him. He's a 154 favorite here. This is a tough spot because this range right here between $7,400 Duffy and $7,200 McCollus, they're pretty much priced the same. They're as big favorites. They have both decent or they have 2 of the 3 or 4 best matchups you could have in baseball against Detroit and McCollus against Miami. So, or Mikolas, however you want to say it. I'm probably not going to get to Danny Duffy at $7,400. I understand the matchup is good. I think I'd rather take one-off lefties against him. Even though he strikes out lefties more, he gives up more power to them. The 4.96 Sierra is just worrisome for me. The 8.7% walk percentage, look, he's limiting damage, only 1.06 home runs per 9. But some of these things do stand out, and I think his strikeout rate at 21.9%, when you factor in a lot of that is being weighed and swayed from the left-handed batters that he strikes out, it worries me a little bit for the rest of the lineup. I'm probably not going to get there at 7,400. 7,200 McCollus, though, I have some more interest in. The danger for him is that he does give up home runs. 1.6 home runs per 9. The danger is that he gives up a power from both sides of the plate. A 276 from the left, and a 175 from the right. Those are scary numbers, right? Especially the 276 from the left. That stands out. But let's talk about some upsides here. He's a 152 favorite, and his matchup in terms of limiting power is as good as it gets in baseball. 111 team ISO for Minnesota, or for Miami, that is. They're terrible. They strike out around league average at 23.8% of the time. Again, 24% of the time, 24.5% is around the average. So they strike out around average. And this is a ballpark, unlike Kansas City with Danny Duffy, that's going to favor McCullers in Miami. So a couple things to like. He has a better SIERA by a good amount, by 0.55 than Danny Duffy. He walks half the batters about at 4.7. The problem is he gives up a lot of power to lefties, and his strikeout stuff stinks. 17.5% strikeout stuff. You're pretty much hoping here, and he goes deeper into the games than Duffy, 5 2/3, and then this matchup, I imagine he touches the 6th inning more times than not. So what you're hoping for here is a guy who gives up 1-2 earned runs at most. He can get you 4 to 5 strikeouts over that time, and he pretty much walks away at 7,200 with potential win upside and around 16 fantasy points if he can get you that win. That's what you're hoping for here. I think you more so get that out of McCullers than Danny Duffy here for multiple reasons. Detroit has more power. Sure, they strike out a little bit more, but nothing insane. McCullers' strikeout stuff is terrible, but at 7,200, he's probably my 4th pitcher into my player pool right now. We have Verlander, Lucchesi, Woodruff, and McCullers. Danny Duffy is close, but I'm going to choose in the $7,200 range McCullers. Mitch Keller, 7K. This is way too much money for a guy who's only made 1 start. Sure, he struck out 7 batters, but he also gave up 6 runs, and he couldn't get a single ground ball in that start. Only 16% ground ball rate in that first start. That's terrible. I mean, obviously small sample, but could not get a ground ball. Struck out a decent amount of batters, was giving up a lot of power, especially to righties in that game. It's hard to go off of a 1-game sample, but I'm not paying $7,000 for a pitcher who gave up 6 earned runs in his first start. Now going up against Atlanta, who doesn't strike out and has a lot of ISO, above average, 1.89 team ISO. Yeah, in a ballpark, especially in Atlanta, that's going to favor the batters. Stack all the Atlanta guys here. Stack them from the right side of the plate. You can stack the lefties. I probably favor the righties more so, but stack any of them. I don't want any Mitch Keller. Tommy Milone, no shot. No shot I play this guy against Minnesota. Tommy Milone, a couple of things that are nice about him. He has a 25.7% K rate overall. That's the 4th highest on the slate, but here's the thing. It's sort of a fake K rate. 36% of that's coming from lefties, 15% of that's coming from righties. He's going to face like 75 to 80% righties today in this Minnesota lineup. Sure, maybe he gets Marwin Gonzalez, but I think Gonzalez is a switch hitter if I remember, so he'll probably go to the right side. So 243 ISO for Minnesota. They strike out the 2nd lowest on the slate behind Houston at 20.1%. There's no upside here for Malone. He's a huge underdog. He has a decent SIERA at 4.00, right at 4. Walks not that many batters, but he gives up hard hit contact, and he does not strike out righties against a team that absolutely crushes pitching from both hands. So 236 ISO to lefties, 238 ISO to righties. He's going up against a 243 combined team ISO. They hammer the ball. Stack all the Minnesota guys today. They'll probably be expensive. Stack them all. No Tommy Milone for me. Sean Anderson, 6,600 against the Padres. So a couple things here. A great matchup against the Padres in terms of strikeout stuff in the ballpark. You're in San Francisco. It's going to help the pitcher. Padres strike out the most in the slate at 27%. They have above average ISO. Sean Anderson limits power to righties, gives up power to lefties. But the biggest thing here, he strikes out 13% of batters. Now the matchup is probably going to increase that. He only goes about 5, or he does go 5 2/3 innings per start. Good matchup here, but here's the thing. A 5.05 SIERA does give up hard hit contact, does give up home runs, no strikeout stuff. I'm not going there. I'd rather go up a few $100s to McCullers. Edwin Jackson should not be 5,300. He should not be in the MLB. A 5.35 SIERA is the highest on the slate. An 11.9 ERA. Obviously, that's not indicating anything. He's not giving up 12 runs per start or per 9, but probably would if he pitched that much. 5.35 SIERA. Give me all the Baltimore bats here. Home runs per 9, 3.66. This guy is going to give up at least 2 home runs today. It's crazy. And he gives up power to both sides of the plate. Lefties 232. Righties 549. Power to righties is insane. That number is obviously probably a little bit skewed. Hard hit contact's insane. He doesn't strike guys out at 15% of the time. He's just giving up bombs. Baltimore, give me everything. Give me the entire Baltimore stack. 5-man stacks today on Draftkings, 4-man stacks on FanDuel. He's pitching in Baltimore, which is a much huge hitter-friendly park. Edwin Jackson should not be owned in any lineups, and you should stack all and everybody against this man. Get the top of the order from Baltimore. Daniel Norris at $5,000. Daniel Norris is an interesting play today. He is an underdog, not the biggest underdog against Kansas City. It is a hitter-friendly park, but it leans more so neutral than what we just saw in Baltimore. SIERA around 4.69, not great, but you're in this range where nobody's great. Under a 6% walk percentage is good. He does give up home runs, 1.72. Doesn't strike guys out. There's not a lot to like here. I'd take Kansas City one-offs from the left-handed side of the plate here against him. Daniel Norris, if I had to pick a very cheap guy, would be my 5th guy in. So Justin Verlander, Joey Lucchesi, Brandon Woodruff, Miles McCullers, and Daniel Norris. I do not have much conviction there. If I'm trying to pay up for bats and fit in maybe a Verlander, maybe I get to Norris as a punt and hope that he gets me 12 points and maybe gets the win and gets closer to 15 or something like that. He only goes about 5 2/3, or only goes about 4 2/3 to 5 innings pitched. So him getting you to the 5th inning and having the win potential is never guaranteed. You can't strike guys out. So yeah, there's not much that I like from Norris here. He's obviously dirt cheap, so if you want to take a punt on him, he would be sort of the punty play below 6K that I like. David Hess at 4,100 against Toronto. Ballpark stinks in terms of being in Baltimore. Toronto at least strikes out. They're coming around the league average in ISO 159 ISO, 170 is around where league average is, but the guy just gives up too much damage. 2.95, he's similar to Edwin Jackson in that he gives up home runs. 3 home runs almost per start, a 522 Sierra. This is just going to be a game filled with terrible pitchers between Toronto and Baltimore with Edwin Jackson and Hess. I don't want any Hess today. Give me the Toronto righties against David Hess. Give me the entire team for Baltimore against Edwin Jackson. So that's where I'm at. Those are the 5 pitchers I'm interested in. A recap of where I'd like to stack. If you want to get some sort of leverage, you can stack a righty or two against Verlander. I probably wouldn't do it from Milwaukee, but that's where you can go. And then outside of that, some other spots are the lefties from Arizona. David Peralta probably hits a home run today against Zach Eflin. From Merrill Kelly, you can go for some righties. I really don't go there. I have more conviction around the lefties from Arizona today. And then just moving down, I have conviction for Detroit one-offs, mainly from the left-handed side of the plate against Duffy today. And then going down even more, Minnesota bats, they're all in favor today. Atlanta bats, especially from the right side, I like them all. The entire Baltimore team, give me everybody against Edwin Jackson. The guy is just a home run monster. He's waiting to erupt. And David Hess, I'd target righties from Toronto. I wouldn't really do a full stack there. Toronto doesn't have too much power, but righties definitely. Grichich in the middle of that order. Daniel Norris, I think, is a fine punt on a slate like this for only 5,000. If you don't want to do that, give me Kansas City. You can do a full stack against him. I'd favor some lefties. So that's where I'm at. Hopefully this video saves second time through. My name's Sal. Best of luck tonight, everybody. Make sure to subscribe before you leave. Hit that like button. Follow me on Twitter at SalVetriDFS. Peace out, gang.